getting to the conspiracies and Five Guys stuff that you mentioned, that is something a lot of people would say was sexist, and perhaps even a sexist harassment campaign against Zoe Quinn. Was that your impression at the time?
I regarded it more as gossip um, than anything else, and I think it's somewhat unfair to fold it into GamerGate. I think GamerGate was a separate thing that emerged from that scandal, um, rather than being a direct continuation from it. I think there was sexism involved, but I think that sexism was directed at both sexes. If you read the original Zoe Post, it seems quite clear to me that that poor guy was in an abusive relationship and it was a victim. Um, if the genders had been reversed, I don't think it would have been controversial at all. In fact, as Me Too and things coming out later on showed, women were being celebrated for calling out abusive partners or ex-partners, quite rightly too. But this guy does it, and he gets reframed as the dangerous, nasty abuser. And as more and more information came out on and around that, it became clearer and clearer that he was a victim of abuse. And then later on, we saw what happened with other people who had been involved with Quinn, including Mr. Holoka's suicide. So, yeah, I think there was some sexism in that a woman sleeping around is still regarded as extra bad, but there was also sexism uh, in her ex not being regarded as a victim.
Now, people who opposed Gamergate would say, look, if you look through the chat logs of that IRC channel that you were briefly a part of observing, and I was briefly a part of observing too, albeit like way later, to investigate this, I they would say that look, some of the people in here did seem like they wanted to basically just fuck with Zoe Quinn for no reason. That's not saying everybody. That's not saying even most people. But it seems like some of the people were. And they also have this channel named Burgers and Fries, which is obviously a play on the restaurant and this idea that she slept with five people allegedly. And
Yeah.
like it's really I think just a bad look. But while you were there observing this, did you witness any harassment or attempts to harass people?
No, I saw a lot of bad jokes and the kind of Chan culture stuff, which maybe I'm desensitized to. But the thing about trolls, for the most part, is that they're not sincere. They say and do things to get a rise, not because they genuinely believe them, like over 99% of the time. So I think people selectively take Chan culture seriously when it suits them, when they can play it up. And that was only ever a tiny minority of people anyway. I wouldn't have taken it seriously. I've been around the Chan boards lurking plenty in the past, and you have to just kind of let it wash over you. And it's a deliberate thing in Chan culture to try and freak normal people out and keep them away. So if you react to it, you're kind of doing what they want. But in a similar way to what I was saying earlier about critics not really understanding games properly, I think people don't understand internet subcultures properly either, or the nature of trolling.
That might be true. And my view was that, I don't really like this kind of thing. I think I might have like retweeted a sexist joke once on Twitter or on a video or something. I mentioned it, but like when I regret doing that because like I don't ever think of myself as like a sexist person, and I didn't at the time, and I don't think that that's what motivates me. But I saw a joke and I'm like, oh, that's funny. I want to retweet it, and I think I later stopped. I did and because I realized I'm like, you know what? Actually, that's not really cool. But there is this sort of culture on 4chan, 8chan, stuff like that, where it's like we're gonna be edgy and we're gonna walk up to a line, but we're not gonna cross the line unless you're on pole. Then you cross the line. But but and I think that's probably like fine to have like a culture to some extent like this sort of subculture online where people can go and it's a completely different experience than anywhere else on the internet. I think there's like probably like some value in our society to having something like that. To have this underground chinology sort of like weird part of the web. But
Yeah,
good.
I think the same is true offline as well. You know, like underground heavy metal shows or discrete fetish clubs or things like that.
Yeah.
It's important to have somewhere where your id can play. But I mean, all the internet used to be like 4chan. Everyone used to be anonymous, and that was kind of glorious in its way. The inshitification and commodification of the internet has had a pretty big cost, I think.
Yeah, I miss the old internet in many respects. It was a lot more decentralized too, which was really nice.
Yeah.
But we're probably never going to go back to the old internet, barring some
No.
like really weird circumstances that probably going to be disastrous for society, like the massive economic collapse that takes down all the tech companies or something.
Maybe Elon Musk will end up buying the entire internet and screwing it all up.
Maybe, maybe. But there was a lot of good about the old internet and these weird subcultures, but there was also bad, right? There was in some communities, like Pole, for instance, right? Like some genuinely like racist stuff. And
Yeah.
there were people who were like, you know what? I'm gonna fuck with you and dox you and like, well, actually that still happens, but now it's like mainstream, like people do it. So that never really went away, I guess.
Yeah, and no one used to be dumb enough to put their personal information online
Now they're all on
back in the
Facebook
day.
sharing where they are 24/7 and like, oh, I just checked into this Starbucks. It's like doxing themselves
Yeah,
constantly, you know? It's
I do think a lot of this kind of culture clash online comes down to that changing culture because I've been online since God. I used to dial into goth.net or whatever it was called, a BBS system, direct dial through my Atari ST on a 2600 modem, for Christ's sake. You know, uh, you didn't used to take this shit seriously. Like, if someone called you a faggot and said they were going to cut off your head and shit down your neck,
oh
you
wait, hang
just
on.
laugh
I'm
it
not
off.
sure
What was I saying?
that
Oh
you
yeah, but we just used to ignore it. It didn't mean anything. I mean, what were they going to do? Nothing. I used to be pretty heavily involved in online atheism and used to get into blazing rows with various religious people. Some Muslim apologist threatened me, and I thought, well, maybe I ought to take this a bit more seriously, and looked into it, and it was a 14-year-old living with his mum. So who beat the shit out of him when she found out what he'd been up to. So sure, some tiny minuscule fraction of people that you meet online are going to be genuinely psychotic. Some fraction of those are going to be genuinely dangerous. But what are the odds of them being close to you? And I think people from the old internet, and more broadly, I think men brush this stuff aside. Whether we should or not, I don't know. But I think, for want of a better word, the internet is becoming more feminized and women take these kind of threats a lot more seriously, and people who weren't there for the older internet take these things a lot more seriously, possibly more seriously than they should. I'm kind of on the fence whether we should take them more seriously, those of us who don't, or whether they should take them less seriously. But something is off about people's threat calibration, I think.
I agree. It's such a nuanced topic because I think that there should be lines, but those lines should probably be very broad. Like there should be like we should have like a large overton window for what's acceptable in terms of like political discourse in society. Like I think that I am not very articulate today. That's what I think. But I think that we should have like a very broad Overton window in a pluralistic society where a large array of viewpoints are tolerated. That doesn't mean you have to agree with them. In fact, you can push back on them 100%. That's good in some cases. But this idea that we need to ban everything and everyone, and then like you had Anita Sarkeesian saying that the online harassment isn't just the threats; it's things like "you suck" and "you're a liar." Like those things are I wouldn't consider that harassment ever. I mean,
No, and she did suck, and she either was a liar or very stupid and ill-informed. So I think calling someone a liar is marginally better than just writing them off as stupid. Yeah, it's not insulting them; it's saying that they are, genuinely being economical with the actuality.
yeah. But at the same time, it's like obviously I think that I think probably most people would agree that like there probably are limits. Like you shouldn't threaten people. That should be against the rules, and that shouldn't be allowed in in our community, the GamerGate community. For instance, we would never allow that. I don't think doxing or threatening people with like actual threats.
Yeah, community. It's a tricky word, isn't it?
Well, insofar as yeah, I guess yeah. What do you think of that? Hi, I'm Tachyon Blue. Thank you for watching another one of my GamerGate book video segments. Altogether, I've interviewed over 70 people involved with GamerGate, and I'm going to be launching a Kickstarter campaign in the coming weeks. So please, I need your support to help make this project a reality. I'm turning these 70 plus interviews into a multi volume series of books, the first volume of which is already completed. And so I'd like you to please stay tuned for more information about the Kickstarter. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and comment. More updates will be coming in the near future. Thank you, and take care.